Hi, and welcome to Wilder Outdoor Academy. In today's lesson, I'll teach you how to make a knife from a nail. It's a ton of fun, a great activity to do as a family or just to do on your own, and a great way to connect with a tool that we often just take for granted. So, for today's activity, you'll need a few things. The first thing you will need are nails. Now, these are 3-inch nails. These are actually 10D 3-inch finishing nails. The few things to pay attention to here. One is these nails are not very thick. Thicker nails will require a lot of time to forge into a knife. Now, that doesn't mean you can't do it. It doesn't mean it's not a fun activity. It just means it'll take a lot of time and energy. So I like to use these 10D 3-inch finishing nails. The finishing nail also doesn't have a wide head, which makes them easier to grip when you're using them. You can use any nail you like, but for those of us looking to start this out, again, I would recommend 10D 3-inch finishing nails. The next thing you'll need is a hammer. So today's lesson does not involve any fire, no forging, just good old hammer, nails, and another hammer, ideally, to use as sort of an anvil. But this is just a regular hammer you can get at your hardware store. Hopefully you have in your toolbox or in your garage. This is a sledgehammer. Now, do you need a sledgehammer? No. What you need is a piece of metal to hammer your knife on. The reason we want to use metal is because anything else will likely break, like a stone. If you want to hammer on a stone, that stone is going to, at some point, crack, potentially send chips at you in a way that could hurt you. If you're hammering on something like wood, it's likely too soft to actually bend the metal, and you'll wind up pushing the nail into the wood. So we want something metal, something we could hammer against. I like using the maul, which is the head of a sledgehammer. If you don't have this, you could just use the head of another hammer. There's probably enough space on those to get this done. So something here that can serve as sort of your anvil. You'll also need a pair of pliers. The reason I use pliers is because when you hit that metal, it's going to send shock waves through the metal. If you're holding it in your hand, that energy goes into your hand and it hurts. Boy, does it hurt. So when I'm making this, I like to hold the end of the nail with a pair of pliers. Now, if you don't have a pair of pliers, you've got some options. You could lay a piece of wood on top of your nail and hold it firm. And that way the energy is going to be absorbed by the thing that your hand is holding, the wood, not your hand. You can potentially step on it with your foot if it's on a flat surface. But again, you just don't want to be holding that nail. Pliers are a great option. Last but not least, you'll need something to sharpen the knife with. Now, this is a pretty standard knife sharpener. It's just a kitchen knife sharpener available at places like Bed Bath & Beyond, but also at outdoor stores. Pretty standard, straightforward. Now, there are a lot of options out there for knife sharpeners. If you really want to go sort of primitive, you could use a rough stone and grind the sharp edge of the knife on that. But today we'll be using a regular kitchen knife sharpener. Now, I have a challenge for myself today because I want to see if I can do it. So my goal for today is to make a knife that is sharp and functional. So sharp that it can cut through some paracord. So if you've ever done any sort of more intense or even primitive camping, you'll know that working with paracord is something you'll have to do, especially if you're in a survival situation and you have it with you. So the goal for today is to create a knife with the materials I showed you that can cut this paracord. Let's see how it goes. So today's lesson is pretty straightforward. I've got my nail. I've got my large piece of metal that I'm going to use like an anvil. I've got my pliers. I'm going to grip the head of the nail in my pliers. I'm going to hold this maul down because when I hit the sledgehammer, when I hit the nail, that sledgehammer is going to move. It's going to bounce. So I don't want it to bounce. I'm going to take my hammer. I'm just going to start hitting it. not super hard, just hard enough to reshape the metal. And after just that many hits, you can start to see the metal being reshaped. I'll show you up close. You can see here it's starting to flatten out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to work the top half of the nail until it starts to get flat, and as it starts to get as wide as I would like, because the more I hit it, the wider it's going to get and the longer it's going to get. Once it's to the width I'd like for my knife, I'm going to start moving down and pushing that metal, flattening it out, and making this knife a little bit longer, because as you hit this, because it's a round shape, once that flattens out, all that metal has to go somewhere, and your knife will get wide and long. Let's give it a go. Okay, so I've hammered out my knife into the shape I want. I'll show it to you up close. It's a little rough around the edges, literally, but you can see that's the shape of the knife. Just a bunch of hammer strokes and a nail. Now, if I had a grinding stone, or if you have a grinding stone, instead of the sharpener that I'm using, you could grind down that spot right there and smooth this out this side as well. But I'm not too concerned today about how pretty it is. I just want to know if I can cut my paracord. So the next step is get my knife sharpener. Now this knife sharpener is designed essentially for kitchen use, but it should work here because it's going to reshape this metal. But it's got two sharpening stones on either side that are at a point. I'm just going to run my blade through here until those hard edges are sharp edges. The other thing to take into consideration when you're doing this, something to think about, is that the thinner you make this, the easier it is to make sharp. So hammering out, especially the side you want to use as the cutting edge, doing enough strokes so that it's really, really thin is going to save you some time on this. So I'm going to sharpen it. We'll see if it will cut the paracord. Okay, so now comes the moment of truth. See if this can cut. I'll find the sharpest part. I'm going to run this paracord over that sharp part as many times as I can. All right, so took a little bit of work, but we got through the first layer, and we are definitely on our way to cutting this paracord. So, will my nail knife cut paracord? The answer is yes, but it's a lot of work. So, still a useful tool. You can do all sorts of things with it. Anything from cutting up your food to carving off bark. But again, just a fun activity to get us connected to the tools that we use, and a safe and fun way to do it. So get out there, make your knives, have some fun.